All right. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining me. We'll go ahead and get started here. If you got a question, go ahead and post it. It's either going to be to the right of the video or it's going to be below the video. If you're on a mobile device, it's probably going to be below the video there. So go ahead and get your questions in here and we'll go ahead and get started here. So Brian C. asks, hello. I've been working on the move shallowing my downswing. I know Clay had a module that stated it doesn't matter how steep or shallow your angle of the backswing is. But would it be ideal to have your backswing more shallow so your arms would have less distance to move to get into the slot and be more fluid and consistent? Thanks. Yeah, so to say it doesn't matter, it does matter. It absolutely matters. But it doesn't mean you can't play golf with a steep or a steeper backswing versus a more shallow, flatter backswing. So a vertical backswing versus a flatter backswing. So you think the difference between like a Matt Kuchar, who's more of a flatter backswing, and a Bubba Watson, who's more of a very vertical backswing. So you can think about what the advantages or disadvantages are of either one. You basically have to find and then choose based on that what's really going to work the best for you. So if you have more of a vertical backswing, so what that means is in the backswing, I'm bringing my hands up much higher. So my arm angle here is going up like this. That's basically what I'm feeling like. So really, really up high up in the sky, like a Bubba Watson. They're punching your fist through the sky. If you're in that kind of position, well, it's typically going to be easier to create speed because you're going to have more space and time to accelerate the club. And typically, the more space and time you have to accelerate the club, the more speed you can generate. That's part of the big reason why Bubba Watson is such a long hitter is because he creates all that space and time. Bubba Watson's not, he's 6'3" or 6'4" or something like that, but he's not like a muscle bound, really, really strong guy. He's kind of a string bean, actually, and he creates a lot of speed mainly because he creates a lot of time and space to accelerate the club. The problem is that if you get really vertical like that, you have to get this club back on plane somehow. You have to shallow out the club. If you get the club more up here, you can't just go straight down into the golf ball, or you're just going to stick that club in the ground. You may come way over the top. There's all kinds of things that you can do. You have to shallow out the club from there. So if you get the club way up here, now in the downswing, I've got to get this club shallow out. If you go look at Bubba Watson's swing, or anybody that swings very, very vertical. Dustin Johnson's a very vertical swinger. Another guy who's a big hitter. Pretty much anyone who's a big hitter has a pretty vertical swing for the most part. There's some guys out there that aren't really vertical, but are still long hitters like Rory McIlroy. He's not a real vertical guy, but he still gets his arms up fairly high. But basically, you go look at those guys on video, and you're going to see in the downswing, they get that club shallowed out in the downswing. So that's a big part of it. Now, if you think about Matt Kuchar, right? Matt Kuchar is a very flat swinger. So his lead arm is kind of matching his shoulders here. Now, the advantage to that is that I don't have to go very far to shallow the swing. I'm basically on plane already. I don't have to shallow out the club anymore. I just keep the club basically where it's at. And I come down on plane nicely. Now, I've seen a lot of people who have flat swings and then come over the top in the downswing. You still have to. That doesn't mean if you have a flat backswing that you're going to have an automatically on plane downswing, but it can make it a little bit easier to swing down, have the club already shallowed out, and swing down the downswing. The disadvantage to that is if I'm swinging like this, I don't have a lot of space and time to accelerate the club. I'm going to have a hard time generating a lot of speed from here. Matt Kuchar is not a long hitter. He's a tall, lanky guy, similar build to what we see with Bubba Watson. But Bubba Watson outdrives him by 30 yards, 40 yards. So, there's a big difference there. And it's mainly because Matt Kuchar can't generate as much club head speed as Bubba Watson from that position because he just doesn't have enough time and space to create the club. But that's what works for Matt Kuchar. So that just goes to show you can play good golf with either one, but you have to look at what's most important to you. is distance really, really important for you? If you're really struggling with distance, I'd recommend having a more vertical swing. If you're someone who's already got a lot of club head speed, maybe you're swinging 120 miles per hour and you have a very vertical swing, but you're having a lot of trouble controlling that. Maybe toning it down a little bit to somewhere in between is going to get you a little bit, may make you a little bit more consistent, may make it a little bit easier to shallow out the club. So you got to look at most important to you. I think most people are in the distance category, and having something that's in between is going to be a pretty good spot. So like a Rory McIlroy, he's like in between that area. Adam Scott, he's in between that area. Long hitter, very consistent ball striker. Tiger Woods, same thing. Long hitter, very consistent ball striker. He's somewhere in the middle there. So somewhere in the middle would look something like this, right? Where I'm not flat, I'm not super vertical, but I'm somewhere in between. I'm up in this area. This is where you're going to see most people because it's a good place to shallow out the club from, and you're getting your hands up high enough that you're able to get some club head speed from that kind of area. So that's what I would recommend doing is somewhere in that area. But again, you have to look at what's most important to you. I don't see a lot of people swinging 120 miles per hour with a flat swing. So I would recommend being probably a little bit more on the vertical side. But like I said, it doesn't mean you can't play great golf. It just means that you may not be as long as you could be if you raise the arms up a little bit more. All right, so go ahead and get your questions posted on here. And let me actually refresh this and make sure there's not a ton of questions being posted on here. Nope. All right, so get your questions posted on here. This is the last one that's on here right now. So get your questions posted and we'll get them answered. So John Z says, Q, I'm finding that more side bend in the downswing has increased shaft lean at impact. Seems to help in preventing flipping and standing up. Your thoughts? Yes, exactly. You need to have side bend in the downswing in order to do that. If you don't have side bend, what are you doing? You are early extension. So for those of you who are not familiar with what side bend is, that's basically where I'm bending into my side. It's actually either side. In the backswing, if you're right-handed, in the backswing, I'm getting side bend into my left side, right? If I don't have side bend, then I'm just doing this, right? And my shoulders are getting very level as I go up to the top. It's going to be hard for me to see the golf ball, and I'm going to need to make a lot of compensation in the downswing to not flip, to not have to stand up and flip in the downswing. Now, in the downswing, if I don't have this side bend here, what am I going to be doing? I'm going to be doing that. I'm going to be flipping the club. So exactly, side bend is very, very important. If you're struggling with early extension, we actually have an early extension course on the website. And Clay, there's drills in there that go over side bend. So John Z, you're on the right track. Side bend is definitely a key to getting forward shaft lean and so on and so forth. So yeah, that's exactly what you need to do. So Eric D says, how can you determine the loft and spin for 100-yard or less shot? How can you determine the loft or spin? I guess I'm not sure what you mean. Like on a launch monitor? How can you determine the loft and spin for a 100-yard shot? I mean, the only way to really know what the dynamic loft would be or the spin would be to use a launch monitor and hit the ball and have it tell you. Maybe I'm not understanding what you're asking. But yeah, I mean, you can't just look at a shot and know what the spin rate is and what the loft is. That'd be really impressive if you could do that. The spin would be almost impossible. I mean, you could have a general idea because typically for 100-yard, if you're hitting a wedge 100 yards, let's say you're using a 56-degree or 54-degree wedge, spin's going to be in the 10,000 to 11,000 range, most likely for a well-struck shot. Dynamic loft on that shot's going to be somewhere in the area of 40 degrees, probably maybe a tick higher, 40, 42 degrees for a well-struck shot. That's what you're going to see with tour players. So I don't know if that's what you're asking. If you're not familiar with what dynamic loft is the loft that you're presenting to the golf ball at impact. So actually, I can use my new angle finder thing. I can show you. This is actually a trailer hitch thing, and I thought it'd be really good to use as an angle finder. So if you watch here at address, if I have this straight up and down, this is a 50-degree wedge, right? If I have this shaft straight up and down, that's 50 degrees of loft from the horizontal here. That's 50 degrees of loft. If I lean this forward, you can see I'm de-lofting the face. So if someone has forward shaft lean, they're going to be de-lofting the face. So when you're coming into contact and you have forward shaft lean, that's your dynamic loft, is what you're presenting to the golf ball at impact. So 50 degrees is the static loft on this club. Your typical tour player is going to be taking off of a 50-degree wedge. They're probably going to have a dynamic loft of somewhere probably in the neighborhood of 37, something like that. 56 degree wedge is probably going to be in the neighborhood of 40, somewhere in that area. And that's what you're probably going to be hitting from about 100 yards is about a 56-degree wedge. Depending on your club head speed, if you're a lower club head speed player, that might be a lower loft, which means you're going to have lower dynamic loft, right? And you're going to have a lower spin. So hopefully that makes sense. But yeah, if I didn't answer your question there, who asked that? Eric. If I didn't quite answer your question, let me know because I wasn't sure exactly what you meant by that. All right. All right, so Mark B says, when I try to hit a really big drive, my inclination is to cause a chopping action, just like swinging an axe. Naturally, I dig deep and slice badly. How can I fix this? Well, one, I wouldn't try, if you can't control your really hard swing, aggressive swing, then I'd probably ease off of it a little bit. I would use the swing that would get you to be, when you're out playing, that would get you at least somewhere in the neighborhood of the fairway. I mean, if you're in the rough a little bit, that's fine. But like if you're slicing it out of play, obviously that's not going to be good, right? So if you're trying to hit a really big drive, you need to get better with that swing. Now, how to fix a big slice is basically what's going on is you're probably swinging over the top. You're swinging with all your upper body is most likely what's going on. That's what happens a lot of times. When people try to dig deep and swing harder, a lot of times they don't swing any harder. They just swing pretty much with all upper body. So one, I'd make sure that you get a good weight shift to your lead side and then drive with your lead leg and make sure that you are driving with that lower body and then give it all you can with your upper body. So what I'm saying is that you're probably going up to the top and then you're trying to hit that big drive and you're starting down with the arms right away. I would go up to the top, get that weight shift to the lead side. So here I'm at the top. Now I'm going to get that weight shift to the lead side and then I blast with my arms. But the other thing I would say, if you aren't doing that, maybe you just swing over the top because when you swing harder, then you need to swing more from the inside. So maybe if you're taking your big swing, instead of swinging like that, this is an exaggeration, but instead of swinging like that, I would try to swing more in to out like this. And you may hit a big old block to the right. That's completely fine. Now you need to get that club face square. So feel like you're swinging out to the right and then rolling the hands over more through contact to square it up. I'd also recommend working through our Never Slice Again course. That's going to help you to get that club swinging more from the inside. But in general, what I would say is, you may need to tone down the swing a little bit for the course right now until you get more comfortable with getting that club to swing more on plane. So to get to the Never Slice Again course, click the house icon at the top of the screen. That will take you to the home page. If you scroll down on the home page, you'll see a list of all the courses that we offer. Never Slice Again is in one of the courses there. Click that course and get started swinging more from the inside. And for those of you who are hooking, we have the same course, Never Hook Again, if you want to take a look at that. So James B says, what are some really good drills to stop topping the ball? That's actually another course that we have that's full of drills that you can do to help you to stop topping the ball. So you want to go to our Stop Chunking and Topping course. To do that, click the house icon, scroll down the homepage. You'll see a list of all the courses. Click the Stop Chunking and Topping course. Basically, topping and chunking are a product of the same issue. So what that means is the only difference between chunking and topping is that you don't hit the ground when you top the ball and you hit the ground when you chunk the ball. So basically what it means is when you're coming down into contact, your club is coming down and reaching a low point. So my club is coming down, it reaches a low point, and then it works back up. So when I'm topping the ball, what I'm doing, let me angle this down a little bit. If I'm topping the ball, what I'm doing is I'm coming down, I'm reaching my low point. Let me get a ball here. There we go. So I'm coming down, I'm reaching my low point in this area, and then my club's working back up, and I hit the top of the ball. When I chunk, my club is coming down, it's reaching its low point, it's hitting the ground before the golf ball, and then I'm hitting the ball. So that's really the only difference between a chunk and the top. The biggest reasons why that happens is because of either one, we're not loading up properly. So what that means is I'm not transferring my weight to my inside of my trail leg, and I'm not getting fully loaded up as I work up to the top of the swing. Generally, what I see is that I'll see people that have what's called a reverse weight shift, where they'll kind of get their weight to their lead side as they're going up, as they're starting their backswing. And then in the downswing, they kind of fall away, and that makes that low point happen back here in the backswing. So that's number one. You want to make sure that you're getting fully loaded up. So there's a dot drill that you do where you put a dot behind the golf ball, and you make sure that you can see that dot throughout the backswing. That's making sure that you're loading up. Because if I'm having that reverse weight shift, I'm moving over here, and now I can't see that dot from over here if I have this dot on my back of my ball. So what am I going to do? I'm going to fall away, and when I fall away, I'm going to end up moving that low point behind the golf ball. That's not as common as the next piece, which is just not getting a good weight shift to the lead side. So maybe you're loading up properly, but then you just don't shift your weight to your lead side, and then you just kind of hang back and you do this action where you hang back and that club, the low point happens before the golf ball. So the another drill in there is getting that good weight shift to the lead side. So we got to load up and then get that good weight shift to the lead side, and that will help you out quite a bit with the chunking and topping. So go to that course. That's what you're going to work on in that course, is loading up properly and then getting that good weight shift to the lead side. All right. So Jens Kristen S says, what are your thoughts about the towel under the armpits exercise? Let's say I'm not a big fan because it restricts you. So the whole reason why people do that drill is so that they can stay connected, right? So there's this myth out there, or there's common instruction out there that I see all the time, where they talk about how you want to keep this towel underneath your arm throughout the swing, and that's going to keep you connected. But watch, when I do that, if I were to have a towel underneath here, if I were to do that, look at my swing. I'm really restricted. I can't really get my arms up. I need to disconnect. I need to get my arms disconnected as I go up to the top. So that way I can create lots of speed, time and space to create speed. So the only place it matters to be connected is at contact. This is the only place it matters. I need to disconnect at the top of the swing and disconnect in the follow through. I need, when I'm going through impact, because it's going to restrict your finish as well. If I'm keeping that towel on, I'm basically finishing like this, right? So I'm not a big fan of the drill. The only place it matters to be connected is at impact. In fact, I think Clay has a video on this. If you search the word connected, you can find what I'm talking about. Now, we do have a drill on the website where we put like I have a towel right here. You put like a glove underneath the front of your lead armpit, right? So that's keeping you from maybe coming over the top in the downswing. Because what we do want to do is we want to keep this this arm, as we're going up to the top of the swing, kind of pinched up against your chest, right? So if you're someone who's coming over the top, my arm is coming out away from my chest, most likely. So you want to put this in the front of your armpit, right? And as you go up to the top, you're going to be keeping that. And then as you come through in the full finish, then you want to let that, it's going to drop out. You want to let it drop out as you come around into the full finish. So that's a drill that you can do. But again, I don't think it's one of the better drills out there. I think you'd be better off just working on the Never Slice Again course and working through those drills. But we do have a drill like that on the website as far as the towel is concerned. But again, the only place that matters to be connected is at impact. So that's what I'd be working on. But if you have the towel on your arm throughout, or on your armpits throughout the entire swing, you're restricting yourself. You're going to have a hard time. You might be very consistent, but you're going to have a hard time getting any kind of speed. You're really going to temper your speed if you do that. All right. So Jan C says, Q, I'm right-handed and experimenting with shallowing the club. I've tried turning my left forearm to the right at the top of the swing to shallow. The other way to focus on the right elbow is in front of my chest in the downswing, which seems easier for me. Question is, can it be one or the other movements, or must be both? Typically, it's going to be both. So let me read that again. I'm turning my left forearm to the right at the top. To the right at the top. So let me go over basically what's going to be happening. So if you focus on shallowing out the club, your left elbow is going to be pointing outside the golf ball to shallow out the club. So that's a feeling that you can focus on. You can focus on your trail elbow. That's going to be going kind of more toward your belt buckle. It's going to be chasing your belt buckle. It's going to be coming in toward your belt buckle, again, toward the golf ball as well as you can think about it. You can think about the turning the doorknob to the right, right? That's with the wrist. You can think about that. But if you notice, when I'm doing all of those things, the other things are happening as well. So if I focus on my elbow, look what happens or if I focus on my lead elbow, my left elbow, look what happens with turning the doorknob to the right. That happens, and then also my trail elbow comes in. If I just focus on my trail elbow, my lead elbow points out, and I turn the doorknob to the right. If I just focus on turning the doorknob to the right, look what happens to my elbows. Both my elbows are doing the thing. So they're all happening. It's just a different way of thinking about doing the same thing is essentially what it is. So they're all going to be happening. You can't really turn your elbow out that way and not, and have it, because you're just going to be, basically, if you did that, it would look something like that, right? If you're actually doing those correctly to get the club to shallow out, if the club is shallowing out, then they're all going to be happening. All those things are going to be happening there. So Ethan H says, what are your thoughts when someone asks you how to strengthen their mental game? I would say go to our mental game section. We actually have a mental game section on the website. It's included in your membership. We actually have a connection with Dr. Leffingwell. He works for Oklahoma State University. He's worked with Ricky Fowler, and that's where Victor Hovland went, who was a rookie last year, as well as Matthew Wolf. A lot of great players that have gone through Oklahoma State. They have a fantastic golf program, and it probably has a little something to do with having a great, sports psychologist like Dr. Leffingwell. He's a member of the website, and he reached out to us, and we've done some videos with him. So I'd recommend going and checking out the mental game section. And I'm not an expert in the mental game, but Dr. Leffingwell is. So if you want to go check that out, highly recommend it. There's some great tidbits in there. Also, any book, I'm trying to remember. I don't think I actually have physical copies of the book. I think I just listened to them on Audible. I got to remember his name. I think it's Bob Rotella, I think is his name. Let me look that up. He's written several books on the mental side of golf. Yes. So Bob Rotella, several books on the any of those books are going to be good as well for the mental side. So if you look at the books, golf is not a game of perfect, putting out of your mind. Golf is a game of confidence. Your 15th club, the unstoppable golfer. He's written several books. I haven't even read all of this. How champions think. The golfer's mind. I haven't read all these, but I've read several of them, and they're all pretty good. So I've read How Champions Think. That was pretty good. I've read Golf is Not a Game of Perfect. That was pretty good. That must have been one of his earlier books. Golf is a Game of. I've read Putting Out of Your Mind. I don't think I've read Your 15th Club. I mean, he's just got a lot of them. So if you want to check them out, I'd highly recommend it. But you can check out we have some videos. So to get to the mental game course, all you gotta do is click the house icon at the top of the screen, scroll down on the homepage there. It's going to be toward the bottom of the courses. And you can click there and listen to several of his videos that we have there. And as far as books, some great books out there. Anything by basically Bob Rotella that I've read is excellent. So I would definitely recommend checking those out. I think they're pretty much all on Audible if you're an Audible fan. Or I think I might actually have the Golf is Not a Game of Perfect book. Yep, I do have that one. So I do have this physical book this one's a pretty quick read. So it's Bob Rotella book, Golf is Not a Game of Perfect. I actually got this for like $3 at the half price bookstore. But yeah, this one's a fairly quick, easy read. You want to check this one out. Some of his other ones are a little bit longer, I think. But that one's a fairly quick, easy read if you want to check that out. I'm trying to think if I have any. Fearless Golf, that's a decent one. I wouldn't say that's as good as the one. But this one's again. This is another quick read. This is by Gio Valiante or something like that. But this is a pretty good book for the mental game as well. I really like this one. Zen Golf. This one's a pretty good one. Some good mental type stuff in there as well. Mastering the Mental Game. This is a really good one. This is by Dr. Joseph Parent. So that's a really good one as well if you want to check that out. But yeah, those are all. Basically, I just read books by. I'm not a mental game expert. I'm not a doctor of psychology or anything like that. But yeah, if you're looking to improve your mental game, I would definitely be looking at those books. Now, also Tiger's book, to kind of understand how he thinks. Jack Nicklaus's book, Nick Faldo's book. Those you can pick up some tidbits and kind of how they think about golf and things like that. That can also be good. They're not necessarily mental game books, but you can kind of see how great players think, and can help you understand how you may want to think as well. All right. So Charlie G says, in one of the side bend videos, Clay mentions feeling as though you are hitting the ball from behind you, having the chest really opened up. Could you elaborate on this? Yes. So basically, when you are opening up your body, right? So if you imagine if you're someone who doesn't have side bend and you're an early extender and flipper of the club, right? So you're coming into contact and your hips are square and you're swinging on plane, right? So I'm coming in, I'm swinging on plane. Basically, my club is moving in the direction of the target. And if you look at my hips, if I'm not opening up my body, then my hips are basically in the direction of the target, right? So if I were to open up my hips and keep that same relationship, of the direction that I'm swinging the club in my hips. Well, if I did that, then I would be swinging way over like this. I'd be swinging way over the top, right? So what you need to feel like when you get the side bend and you get your body opening up, you need to feel like the club is more behind you because you are going to be swinging out to the right. It's going to feel more like you're swinging out to the right. I equate it. I always tell students you want to feel kind of like you're bowling. So when you're bowling, right, you're swinging that ball along the side of your body. That's the feeling that you're going to have when you're doing it. Now, that's an exaggeration. You're not really swinging like this, right? That's an exaggeration to help you kind of feel what you need to be doing. But that's what's going on. When you're bowling, right, you have side bend here. You're getting that ball and you're swinging it along the side of your hip here. You know, if you're right-handed, you're swinging it along your right hip. That's the same thing you want to feel in golf. You want to feel like you're swinging that along your right hip as you're coming through. Otherwise, if I keep that same relationship, I'm just going to swing over the top like that, and that's going to lead to more issues. So that's why you want to feel like you're swinging along the side of your body here. You want to be swinging or feel like the club's more behind you, because it is. It's going to be more behind you. If you're a flipper, an early releaser, and the club is in front of you here. If I'm opening up my body, now the club is more behind you if I'm swinging on plane. If the club is still in front of me when I do that, then I'm just going to swing way over the top like that. So hopefully that helps you understand exactly what that means. But yeah, you want to change the relationship there between the way your arms and your shoulders are coming into contact versus how open your body is. Otherwise, you're just going to swing over the top. All right, so Michael B says, hi, Q. A couple of questions on the shallowing out of the club. One, do these exercises apply to the driver? I seem to have gotten the iron side of things, but when I go to this with the longer club, it's still tending to push the ball to the right. I am a lefty. So, yes, this applies to all clubs. You want to be shallowing out any club that you want to get forward shaft lean with and square up the face. You need to be doing the move with. You need to be shallowing out the club. So you may be having trouble with the driver just because it's a harder club to hit. You know, the longer the clubs get, the harder it is. So you probably just need to get in more repetitions with it. If you're pushing it to the left, then you're just not closing the face enough. So that's that second part of the move. That's the turning of the handle down. So what you may want to work on is what we call the tennis racket drill from the move course. I'll tell you how to get to that in a second. But you're getting this club to shallow out. And if I keep it that way and I don't square the face, then I'm just going to block it out a mile. You know, for you, it's to the left. But for a right-handed golfer, I'm just going to block it a mile out to the right. So what do I have to do? I have to shallow out the club and turn that handle to square the face. So now I'm coming into contact and I have a square club face and I have forward shaft lean. So you probably just want to work on the tennis racket drill. The tennis racket drill is great because it helps you to visualize what's happening with the club face. So I can easily see, okay, I'm shallowing out the club. I'm getting the strings to point up to the sky. Then next, I want to turn that handle to square up the face. And now I can stay in my posture and rotate through contact. So that's what I recommend doing is work on turning that handle down a little bit. And that's going to help you to start getting that strike it in the right direction. And that's going to be the move course, 1.3 from the move course, the tennis racket drill. To get to that, click the instruction tab at the top of the screen, then click the Top-Speed Golf System, then click the move, then click the tennis racket drill. Or you can search tennis racket on the website as well. In the upper right-hand corner, you should see a little search window. If you're like on a normal computer, laptop, something like that. If you're on a mobile device, there's an icon in the upper right-hand corner of the screen. It's 3 horizontal lines. Select that. That will expand a menu. If you scroll down to the bottom of that menu, you'll find the search engine there. It actually works really well if you're looking for anything on the website. And then his next question was, and what is considered a good miss via the center line of the fairway? 5 to 15 yards. Thanks. What is considered a good miss vis-a-vis the center line of the fairway? What is considered a good miss? I mean, it really just depends on the hole for the most part. I would say I mean, it really just depends. I mean, if you're in good position, then I would say it's a fine miss. But I mean, if you're behind a tree, or you don't have a next opportunity to hit the next shot at the hole, I would say it's a bad miss. So that could be 5 yards off where you were aiming, or 15 yards off where you're aiming. So it really just depends on the situation, I would say. But I will say that they found that your average tour player has a dispersion of about 65 yards. So if you think about that, that'd be 95% of their shots are basically in that 65 percent, or in that 65-yard cone that I'm talking about here. So obviously that's a lot. That's 37 or so yards in both directions. I wouldn't consider it a good miss if you just stayed within that cone. But when you're thinking about strategy for a hole, you got to put that 65-yard wide cone and see what side you may want to tend toward being. So that's what I would kind of look like. But it's really hard to say what would be a good miss. It really depends on the hole or the situation. If you have a really tight kind of landing area, you might want to look at other options. Maybe the hole bottlenecks at a certain point, and it is wider in other areas. Maybe there's trouble, if there's bunkers. If the whole thing is bunkered, and then you have this little bottleneck area, and that's, let's say you hit your driver 270, 280, and that's 260 away, you might want to consider hitting a hybrid. If you don't have to hit your driver to get up there, if it's like a 400-yard hole, would it be better to try to get lucky and get in the fairway and be, 120 out, or would it be better to hit your hybrid, make sure that you're going to have a second shot, and be 170 out? It's kind of what you have to look at there. But as far as a good miss is concerned, it's really impossible to say, and it just depends on the hole or the situation. But I would say if you're keeping 5 to 15 yards, I would say that is fine. Typically, fairways are going to be wider than 30 yards. Typically, a fairway is roughly about 50 yards wide, depending on where you're playing. You might have smaller, narrower fairways where you play. So, that's what I'd be kind of looking at. But again, fairways are also a little bit overrated. As long as you have a second shot, I would say that, a clear second shot at the hole, I would say that you're most likely going to be in pretty good position there. So that's what I'd be looking at. All right. So Jens Christian says, can you talk about why so many golfers, myself included, having trouble with rotating our hips and getting a straight line release? I can talk about that. So the main reason I see, it's really a combination of things. So one, I think a lot of people have trouble with the straight line release is because they're not doing everything else in the Top Speed Golf system first. So that's pretty common. I get swing review students all the time. They come to me and they say that they're working on their straight line release, but their spine angles are bad. They're not getting a good shoulder turn. They're casting the club, so they're not getting any lag. They're basically not doing any of the pieces of the Top Speed Golf system. So we need to be nailing the first 4 pieces of the Top Speed Golf system before we can get the straight line release. We're just not going to be able to do it unless those pieces are in order first. So that's what I'd be looking at first. You may not have good spine angles at address, and that may be the biggest reason why you're struggling with it. So number one is if I'm coming into contact and my spine angle is vertical like this. So I'm coming in, I'm not angled away, I'm vertical like this. I'm going to tend to want to release the club right here. Whereas if I'm got my spine angle angled away, that's going to help me to release this club out in front. You basically can't release the club out in front unless your spine angle is angled away. So you may need to work on the stable fluid spine course. All right. Then, as far as the power turn is concerned, if you don't have a good shoulder turn, meaning I have this really, really short turn, if I'm doing that, I'm going to typically rush the downswing. And when you rush the downswing, you're going to tend to release the club early. So you're not going to sequence properly. You're going to tend to release the club early. So make sure your power turn is there as well. And honestly, if you don't have a good power turn, you are leaving yardage on the table. And yardage is one of the most important. Distance is one of the most important things of playing good golf. So if you are not getting a good shoulder turn, you are leaving easy yards out there. Really, really easy yards to get out there. So really, really important that your power turn is good. The next piece is lag, right? So if I'm coming down in the downswing and I'm casting this club from the very beginning, I'm basically already releasing the club right here. I have no chance of releasing the club out here because it's already going to be releasing by the time I get into the golf ball. So you need to make sure that you are generating some lag in the downswing. Your compression line, which is the line that goes from our lead shoulder, lead hip, and lead ankle, I want that to be all in a straight line, and I want that to be slightly angled away from the target. So if I'm coming in and my hips are bumped out, I can't. My hips are going to be jammed up. I'm not going to be able to rotate, right? So it's going to be really, really difficult to get my body opened up to be able to release that club out in front and have that proper spine angle if my hips are bumped out. So you need to make sure that your compression line is good. If those four pieces are all good and you're still not opening or you're still not getting the straight line release, then you may need to work on the straight line release and or the move course. Because another big reason I see people who have trouble with getting that straight line release is because they're not shallowing out the club and or they don't understand how to square the club up properly at impact when they have forward shafting. Because if you've done this your whole life, where you've come in, this is how you square the face, is by flipping the club through contact. You have to train yourself on how to square the club up in a different way now. So that's going to be the move course, which is getting the club to shallow out. Because if I'm steep, I have to stand up to get that club to shallow out, right? To get to come back down on plane. And when I stand up, I'm going to early release. And that's the first part of it. And then if I, let's say I am shallowing out the club, but I just come into contact and I do that. That's how you square the face. So that's going to be the second part of the move and the straight line release course. So the first thing I would do is I would look at all the pieces of the Toss Speed Golf system that lead up to the straight line release and then the move, and see where you are on those things. If you're off on those things, then you need to get those things in order first, and in order. So if you look at your swing and you see that your stable fluid spine is off and you are casting the club, then work on your stable fluid spine first. Work on it in order. The order is stable fluid spine, power turn, lag, compression line, straight line release, the move. That's the order in which you want to do that. And if you go to the instruction tab at the top of the screen, you click that and then click Toss Speed Golf System, you'll see on that page that it takes you to, you'll see that they're all in order right there. So you need to make sure that that's good. If you're casting the club and you see you don't have a good power turn, work on your power turn first, right? So you need to work on them in order, make sure they're in good shape, and move on to the next one. Now, you can go to the stable fluid spine and do level 1, level 2, level 3, or you can go to the stable fluid spine and do level 1, and then go to the next piece that you're not great on and do level 1 there, and then go back to the stable fluid spine and do level 2. You can do that if you want as well. It's really up to you, but you need to work on them in order. You can't work on level 2 of the compression line until you are good on level 2 of the stable fluid spine. And these might be things that you already do naturally. You may already be in a great natural position with your spine angle, so you don't really need to work on it. So you got to look at your swing, see what's going on there, and then assess that, and then move on to the next piece. Now, if you want someone to help you with that, if that's, I know it seems like a lot to take on. We try to provide you with the tools to be able to do that. But if you want help with that, I would recommend signing up for Unlimited Swing Reviews. If you want to learn more about Unlimited Swing Reviews, click the Get a Review tab at the top of the screen. That will take you to the Swing Review page. I don't have any spots available right now, but if you want to join my waiting list, go ahead and join my waiting list there, and you'll get notified whenever we open up spots the next time. I've sold out to my waiting list the last 3 or 4 times I've opened up spots. So if you are interested, make sure you join that waiting list, because otherwise you may never get notified whenever I open up spots. You may never have a chance to sign up. So make sure you join that waiting list, because we always notify our waiting list first. All right. So Michael B says, thanks. Thanks, Q. I was talking about driving range sessions. Been working indoors on a simulator, so your answers are appreciated. Yeah, so basically, if you want to know kind of what the numbers are for kind of like an average tour player, you can search TrackMan average, PGA average, or I think it's TrackMan PGA average, and it will show for every club kind of what the TrackMan averages is if you're kind of interested in that. It doesn't show lob wedge or sand wedge or even like a gap wedge. I think it just goes down to pitching wedge. But basically, your average tour player is going to be somewhere in the neighborhood with 100 yards. They're probably going to be hitting about a 56-degree wedge, I would say. Usually, some hit a lob wedge from that distance, but most are going to be hitting that 56-degree wedge. They're going to get somewhere. There really aren't that many times when they're hitting kind of like a full wedge. I guess 100 yards wouldn't necessarily be a full wedge for all of them. But you're going to be looking somewhere in the neighborhood of about 10,000 to 11,000 RPMs a spin. And then what are you talking about? Dynamic loft, you're looking somewhere in the neighborhood with a 56-degree, probably about 40. Now, unfortunately, they don't show dynamic loft on there, but you can actually calculate it pretty easily. They'll show their angle of attack, and then they'll show their launch angle, right? So if you add those together and then take 80% of that, that's basically your dynamic loft. Or actually, it's kind of a complicated thing to explain as far as how to calculate it. But if you work through the TrackMan University, it can help you understand exactly how all that works. Because basically, the ball is going to be launching somewhere in between your dynamic loft and your attack angle. So your dynamic loft is the loft that you're presenting to the golf ball at impact, and then your attack angle is the direction the club head is moving as it's coming down into the golf ball. It's going to be launching somewhere in the middle there, and it gives you the launch angle. So you can kind of see what the launch angle is and base it on there. But if you want to know what the dynamic loft is, you can do the calculation, and you can understand how to do that if you work through the TrackMan University. If anybody's interested in understanding ball flight laws or any of the data that like TrackMan gets or anything like that, TrackMan has a free education. It's actually super cool, where you can go and you can learn about it, and then you can actually take tests. You don't get any kind of certification or anything, but you can take tests and things like that. So I think they do that just kind of raise awareness about all that stuff and maybe get people interested in wanting one so they can buy one, I would guess. But yeah, it's actually a very, very cool tool that you can learn about all those things. So yeah, highly recommend it. Just do a Google search, TrackMan University. It's very, very cool. All right. So Brian T says, what strategy should I use when hitting out of a fairway sand bunker when I'm hitting out of a couple of hundred yards out? Should I be using a hybrid or an iron only? You can hit an iron or you can hit a hybrid out of the bunker. Just understand it's most likely going to come out quite a bit lower because you need to get ball first contact when hitting out of a bunker. If you really try to get that ball up in the air, you're running the risk of chunking it pretty easily. So typically you're going to be hitting the ball fairly thin out of the bunker because you're making sure that you get ball first contact. And when you do that, the ball comes out really low. So if you're in a situation where it's where you have any kind of lip in front of you, there's basically no chance you're going to get over that with a hybrid. So you're probably better off hitting an iron, getting something to get over the lip. So that's just something you got to go practice, or just over time you'll understand how much. So maybe take a little bit more loft than you would think. See how it comes out if you don't have the opportunity to practice. I know not everyone has a fairway bunker that they can go practice in. A lot of practice facilities don't have that. So you kind of have to learn it by getting in the situation. So I would always kind of try to take more loft than what you think. If you're not going to get to the green anyway, take a little bit more loft. If you're a couple 100 yards away, the only thing that's probably going to get there, depending on your club head speed, is a hybrid. If you have a lot of club head speed, you might be able to get there with, with a 5-iron or something like that. But understand it's going to come out lower, so you gotta play that. If you have you don't want to hit the lip, right? You'd be better off leaving it out there, 50 yards short. Hitting, if you're 200 yards away, you're better off hitting like a 7 or an 8-iron, getting where you're 50 yards short, and that you're up there and out of the way, rather than trying to go for it, hitting the lip of the bunker and maybe staying in the bunker, or being 180 yards out or 190 yards out on your next shot. You're gonna have a lot easier time making par or getting up and down from 50 yards out than you are 190 yards out. So kind of have to take it like that. But hey, if you don't you don't have that lip in front of you, you don't have anything to get up over, then yeah, absolutely you can hit. It's just understand it's going to probably come out lower than what you're used to, and also understand that you have to have more precision out of the bunker or out of a fairway bunker. If you get any sand, if you do not make ball first contact, you do not get any. If you get any sand, you're not going to hit it very far. It's just not going to go very far. So you have to, a hybrid is going to be harder to control than a 7-iron. It's going to be harder to get that ball first contact. So understand that as well. There's definitely some risk involved with hitting those kinds of shots. All right. So Eric D says, "Could you demonstrate the swing differences between a driver and a 3-wood?" It really depends on what you're doing. So there's really no difference as far as the swing is concerned, other than if you're hitting if you're trying to hit a driver or a 3-wood off the tee, you can really hit them in the same way. The only difference is with a 3-wood, I would tee it a little bit lower because with a driver, it's a much deeper face, right? It's a much taller face, and we have more space. There's basically more room for error. If you hit it a little bit high on the face, it's still going to be fine. If you hit it a little bit low on the face, it may not be the best drive, but it's still going to be fine. Whereas with a 3-wood, it's typically a shallower face. You don't have as much room for error. So you just want to tee it up a little bit, basically to where about half the ball is above there. And you can hit up on it just like you do with the driver. You maybe don't play it as far up in your stance. So with a driver, you're typically going to be playing that just outside your lead shoulder. It's right where you want to be. Typically, it's going to be right inside your lead foot is where that's going to be. With a 3-wood, you may just have it a ball back of that to allow you to still be able to hit up into the ball and to be able to launch it. But at the same time, not hit too much up into the ball and get to where maybe you're hitting it, topping it, or hitting it really low on the face. So that's really the only difference there. Now, hitting a driver off of the tee and then hitting a driver or hitting a 3-wood off the ground. With a 3-wood off the ground, it'd be very similar to hitting an iron. You just play it just maybe a ball forward in your stance to allow you to come in a little bit more shallow, but you still want to hit down on it and typically take a little bit of a divot depending on the turf. If it's really soft, plush, wet turf, you're definitely going to be taking a divot with the 3-wood. If it's very hard, firm turf, you may just be roughing up the ground. But you still have to make ball first contact. So you're going to be hitting down on the ball a little bit with that. Now, you can hit a 3-wood off the tee box, similar to what you do off the ground, if you prefer to do that. It's just that it's not going to be the best way to get distance. If you're looking to get as much distance as you can out of your 3-wood, I would tee it up a little bit more and hit up on it like you would with a driver. The only difference is, like I said, is you would tee it down a little bit, and you would so that you don't get under it too much. And then you would move it back in your stance, maybe a ball of what you would with the driver. And that's still going to allow you to hit up on it, get that high launch, low spin for the most distance. Now, like I said, if you want to hit it like you would off the ground, I would just tee it up and give yourself a perfect lie. Just barely tee it up, just like you would with an iron. You just barely tee it up to where basically, if this was in the fairway, it would be like if the ball is sitting up perfectly on the grass, like it's in the fairway. That's what I would do. And then it's going to be a little bit more spinny. And if you want to take a little bit of distance off your 3-wood, maybe you're hitting your 3-wood and you're kind of between clubs, right? Maybe it's a really short par 4. Maybe you normally hit your 3-wood 260 off the tee, right? So it's 260 off the tee, and that's when you launch it. That's how far you hit it when you launch it. Now, maybe you're coming up. It's a really short par 4, or maybe it's a really long par 3, and it's 240 yards or something like that. You can't get there with your hybrid, or you can't get there with whatever your next club down is. So you can tee it down a little bit and hit it like you would a normal shot off the fairway, and you can take off some yards and just take your normal full swing and be able to take off a few yards and get it there as well. So there's a couple ways you can do it, but if you're hitting it for distance as far as you possibly can, then you want to tee it up the same way you would with a driver. Just tee it a little bit lower, a little bit further back in your stance, and take the same swing. And if you're wanting to play it, tee it to where you're hitting it off the ground, you do the same thing. You just hit down and through the ball. You'll take a little bit of a divot. If you're teeing it up just a little bit like it's a perfect lie, you can kind of sweep it off of there, even if it is kind of plush turf. But yeah, it's really not going to be much of a difference there. All right, so we got about 5 minutes left. If you got any more questions, go ahead and post them. I'll be happy to answer them for you. So Charlie G says, I find that a 4-wood is easier to hit than a 3-wood. How much distance am I giving up? Probably not a ton. I mean, a 5-wood is going to be easier to hit than a 3-wood, or than a 4-wood. The higher loft you have, you're probably losing as much distance as you would if you were to hit a 5-wood. It's probably not a ton, but it's probably, I would guess 10 yards, something like that. 10, 15 yards. Really depends on your club head speed. The higher club head speed you have, the more dispersion you're going to have between your clubs. The lower club head speed you have, the less gapping, I guess is the right word, the less gapping you're going to have. So if you're swinging 90 miles per hour, you might have 7, 8, 9 yards between your clubs. If you're swinging 120 miles per hour, and I'm talking relative to the driver here, you might have 15, 16 yards between your clubs, between full swings with your clubs. So really depends on your club head speed, but I would guess somewhere in the neighborhood of 10 yards is probably what you're losing there. But hey, if it's easier for you to hit, maybe you just have a hard time getting a 3-wood strike in the center of the face. So maybe you might not be losing not be losing any distance or anything like that because you're hitting the 4-wood so much more solid. So, but I would say all things equal, you're probably losing somewhere in the neighborhood of 10 to 15 yards if I had to guess. So Brian T says, any recommendations for an all-around ball for a high handicapper going through a top speed course? So all-around ball, if you're a high handicapper, I would probably do any ball that's going to be like a Surlyn cover, which is a harder cover ball, or a harder, basically a ball that spins a little bit less. Because if you're a high handicapper, it's most likely because you don't have control of your ball flight. Now, if you're not a big slicer or a hooker or something like that, then you may not need a ball that reduces the spin. But all the balls are basically going the same distance. So there's not going to be a big enough difference, especially for a high handicap golfer. If I would use a ball that feels good to you. But I think the Snell balls are good. As far as a quality golf ball, I think, if you look at that compared to like Titleist golf balls, like a Pro V, $50 a dozen, $50 a dozen, those are, that's pretty high price to pay for a dozen golf balls. The Snell golf balls are $32 or $33 a dozen. And they have golf balls for all levels. So their black ball, that's going to be like a polyurethane color cover or urethane cover. That's going to be a softer cover ball. It's going to spin a little bit more around the greens. It still goes pretty far. It's going to get some more spin though. So if you're someone that struggles with slicing and things like that, you may not want that kind of ball. But understand that a golf ball isn't going to change. You're probably going to shoot about the same score with a softer golf ball. It might save you one stroke around or something like that. Maybe you don't slice it so much that it goes out of bounds. Maybe it stays in bounds or something like that. But for the most part, picking a golf ball is mainly based on, I think, for the most part, on how it feels with the short game. That's what I pick a golf ball on. So your harder cover golf balls are not, I don't feel like you have as much feel and spin around the greens with those. So you may want to have a golf ball that has a little bit more feel and spin around the greens. And it may be okay for you to sacrifice just a little tiny bit of the control you may have. It may slice just a little bit more, and it's probably not a lot. It's probably just a little bit. So I recommend the Snug golf balls. Full disclosure, they don't pay us, but they do send us golf balls to use in our videos. But they're great golf balls. I mean, they work. They're just as good as premium golf balls, and they save you money by not paying tour players to use their golf balls. So that's what I would recommend. James G says, practice swings, are they necessary? You're talking about like before you hit a shot. It really depends. So I would say, if you're out there and it's kind of slow and you're waiting to hit your shot, a lot of times I'll take a practice swing just to kind of loosen up a little bit, to stay loose. If I'm out there, I'm playing at my own pace. If it's a full swing shot, I almost never take a practice swing. Almost never. If it's a gauged shot, basically if I'm playing at my own pace, if it's a gauged shot, I'll typically take a practice swing to kind of help me gauge that. So let's say it's sometimes I don't always do, but let's say it's a swing where I have to take a 9 o'clock swing. It's a kind of a gauge swing. So it's not a full wedge or something like that. I'll take kind of a 9 o'clock swing with a wedge to kind of help me get the feeling of that. And sometimes if I'm really working on a piece in my swing, I'll do a practice swing before that to kind of help me basically reiterate that. So it's really up to you, but it's not necessary to take like 4 practice swings before every shot. I see that all the time. I play with buddies sometimes. They'll get up to the ball. They'll take like 3 practice swings, then they'll hit the ball. That is not necessary at all. I would say 1 practice swing at most. If that's what helps you to play, then sure. But generally, I don't really take practice swings for the most part. So James M says, Q, I think any missed hit off the tee that lands in the fairway is a good missed hit. Yes, absolutely. I wouldn't say any, but if you top it and it goes in the fairway, you might be a long ways away. But most, yeah, if it's a little bit of a miss and you're still out there, you got a good second shot into the hole, I would say that it's a good miss for sure. All right, so thanks everybody for joining me today. We'll be back here tomorrow. Tomorrow's Thursday, so 3 p.m. Eastern time. Everybody join me at that time. Everybody have a good rest of your day, and we'll talk to you next time.